middlemen. The people who go unseen, who rarely make the headlines, but who keep the wheel of evil turning. About how the guy next door just might be a wanted criminal, whose crimes appear to have simply drifted away, evaporated into the atmosphere, right under everyone's noses. I'm Chloe Hedgemathay from Tortoise. This is The Gas Man, Episode 1, The Special Agent.
It took me a little while, but I'm here.
Well, you didn't miss this game. It was really depressing.
Oh, no.
My hometown lost.
Oh, no.
I'm pissed.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
Don't
that.
worry about it. That's life.
A few months after that coffee with Mike, and it turns out just weeks before the Super Bowl, I flew to meet the other man at the heart of this story. The cat in this global game of cat and mouse. Dennis Bass lives in the States. I'd tell you where exactly, but he's got to be careful. What I can say is it's a quiet community. There are palm trees, and he's got a pool. He's tall and tanned with sparkling white teeth, and he has that wiry frame of an older man who works out lots and puts the younger, lazier people like me to shame. He's also, I find out, a huge fan of technology.
Someone was detected at your backyard.
I thought that was turned off. I can do anything from the phone. I have this whole house wired for like everything.
He spends his time walking his dogs and playing pickleball at the country club with his wife Helen.
It's mandatory membership. If you buy into this community, you have to belong to the country club.
People specifically buy here because of that country club. I mean, they don't.
But our story starts before the country club and the pool. Back in a much grittier period in his life, the late 80s, when he was Special Agent Dennis Bass.
We really could pick our own investigations, and if you were good at what you did and you were held in high regard, you could almost write your own ticket. You were successful in undercover if you had something to offer bad guys. Whatever type crime it was, whether it was buying drugs, you were paying more money than anybody else. If it was selling arms to somebody, my job was to get that for them.
In photos I've seen from those days, he looks different. For a start, he had hair back then, black and curly. He reminds me a bit of one half of Starsky and Hutch. I was a kid in the 80s. Ronald Reagan was on his way out.
No, drugs.
And George Bush Sr. was on his way in.
Guilty as charged.
Margaret Thatcher was in Downing Street.
If you take that view, there'll be no progress at all.
Everyone was worried about AIDS and the nuclear threat.
If we are attacked by nuclear weapons, these are the warning signs you must recognize.
The Iron Curtain hadn't fallen yet, and the nightly news was filled with images of tanks shooting across desert landscapes as Iran and Iraq fought a war that seemed to go on forever.
Condemn Saddam Hussein regimes because he is bombing his own people with chemical weapons.
Back then, Dennis Bass was working in Baltimore, his hometown, a city that was so down and out in the 1980s that even its own football team had walked out, leaving in the middle of the night without any notice. Baltimore was struggling with a crime epidemic fueled by a growing heroin and crack cocaine problem. The drugs were coming into the city on ships.
Yeah, Baltimore has a pretty busy, big harbor. But there were always crewmen that would bring a lot of narcotics in, and I did a lot of undercover work on ships. I would develop informants of certain nationalities. There were source countries for heroin, and I'd go on and meet crewmen, and crewmen would tell me, well, we have 5 keys of heroin on the ship, do you have any money? And I would get money to show them, and then we would usually just arrest them.
Was it dangerous?
No, often been asked that. I felt comfortable because I knew what I was doing. The more that I did it, the more and I would prepare. I always used to tell new agents in undercover school, I would tell them, I felt more comfortable going on an undercover assignment than I did working on the electrical panel in my house, because I knew what I was doing undercover-wise. I don't have a great knowledge of electricity, and to me that was a quicker way to get killed than going undercover.
These operations weren't about busting dealers on street corners. Special Agent Bass and his team were after the big players. And so he'd wear snazzy suits and ties and carry expensive briefcases, pretending to be a super-rich businessman looking to buy huge quantities of heroin. He plays it down now, but there were hairy moments, times when he had to think on his feet to convince a target he wasn't doing exactly what they suspected him of doing, setting them up and wearing a wire.
These people wanted to see that I had money, but I would always do it in a way when they were never expecting to see it. I would get on the phone and I'd say, hold on a minute, and I'd say, hey Joe, bring me that briefcase. And they had no idea this was going to happen. And then somebody would show up, they'd bring it back into the conference room, which was wired for audio and video. And I'd say, oh, by the way, to the bad guy, he wanted to see if I was able